Hey nerds, it's Nathan and Merry Christmas. It is hot as fuck outside here in Australia at the moment, so we're inside. We haven't filmed inside for quite some time, but I'm going to hit you with another Skullduggery sequel, Dead or Alive. So, I hope you'll enjoy the content, enjoy the Christmas trees, and if you are in Australia, stay cool. Oh my god. Now, you may or may not remember the last time I did a Skullduggery book. It was book number 13, The Seasons of War, and it was a letdown. I will put a link to my sequel special that I did in the thing, and maybe I'll try and stick one up here somewhere. Seasons of War was a massive letdown. The whole book felt like it wasn't even written by Derek Landy. It was all over the place. The pacing felt off. The story didn't feel right. The characters sort of just felt like they were going through the motions. And I was a bit hesitant to pick up the next book, as, you know, I thought maybe after all these novels, Derek had sort of lost his touch. But no, he hadn't, ladies and gentlemen. Derek sticks the fucking landing with Dead or Alive. Now, the title doesn't make much sense to me, but it was actually really fucking good. All the things that I'm used to from Derek, his characters being complex and interesting. In the last book, they felt complex but flat. But in this one, our characters felt whole again. I'm not even quite sure how to really go about it. Just the stark contrast between Seasons of War and Dead or Alive was really, really massive. It almost felt like two different authors, actually, if I'm being 100% honest. Now, this isn't just going to be a total shitfest like last time, where I dump on the book, Seasons of War. But I feel like there might be a little bit of that again. But we're up to number 14 now. Up to number 14 in the series. We're almost there before we get to the next phase. There's several phases of trilogies and quadrilogies, and we're almost there. We're almost at the final stretch. Now, this one took a really weird turn. I'm going to see if I can get that in the shot. Nice and pretty. Fuck it, stay there. This one had time travel involved in it. And time travel is one of those things where you can very easily fuck it up. This was not complicated. This was not one of those things where we're moving back and forth 1,000 times and we're trying to linchpin particular moments. We had one goal, which was to stop one event. I think our main character, Valkyrie, maybe went into the future 3 times in total. And each time it was actually a really unique perspective. For a quick overview, a large portion of the underlying main story is that once upon a time there was a magical war. There was factions. One faction wanted to rule over non-magical mortal beings, and the other one wanted to live amongst them. And there has been alternate universes where the side with magic who wanted to rule win, and then there is our universe where the side who want to live amongst humans win. But there is always people who believe their true place is above the non-magical people. And so we get to this point. Oh, also, crazy, shapeless, formless, sadistic gods. There's a cult religion around these beings called the Faceless Ones. And when Valkyrie goes to the future, accidentally, mind you, it's always by accident. When she goes to the future, she sees a world that is completely changed, but it's completely dominated by magic. And the Faceless Ones have come back, but all the doom and gloom and chaos and terror that they thought would happen didn't happen the way a lot of, the good guys thought it would. And the world is actually kind of a paradise. Except for the fact of, mortal slaves. Humans are treated as a very, very, very low subset caste of people. And, when you have beings that can manipulate particular aspects of reality with a click of their fingers, it makes sense. It makes sense why these people would be in charge. The powerful are always in charge, even in our world. So there's that. But the main thing that what Valkyrie sees that needs to change the entire event is that her little sister has become known as what is the child of the Faceless One. Kind of like a physical emissary or a physical vessel which can then become their emissary on Earth. And it's horrible. Like, one, Valkyrie doesn't want to see humans enslaved, but two, she doesn't want to see her little sister being used as essentially a finger puppet for gods. And that's where a lot of the story is based around. It's based around trying to be in our present timeline and stop certain events from happening. I don't want to give too much away. But also we're like 14 books in, so it's a while before you get there. But her and Skullduggery are trying to stop particular events in play. And a whole host of crazy shenanigans shit. A Skullduggery from the future kind of possesses Valkyrie and then hops back with her. And, it's this whole big bloody mess. And the city that they live in is actually designed a certain way to act like a giant sigil for this upcoming event. It became that nice level of complex where it wasn't so hard to follow along that you scratch in your brain, but also it was nice to see some real effort put in compared to Seasons of War. We also get to see more of Omen, and I don't know if I've spoken on Omen before. I'm pretty sure I have, but Omen's been in several other adventures within the past books, and Omen is just a young teenager, and he's kind of just your average Joe, which is actually really nice. He's not a chosen one. He's not like his twin brother. His twin brother is a chosen one. He's just average and kind of below average when it comes to his magic and his, smarts and a whole host of other things. But slowly, as the books have gone on, you see Omen grow into a young man, and you see him want to take on responsibilities and still do, the classic teenage shit where he didn't really prepare for exams, and he's probably going to fail school, but he's like, ultimately, like, what he was doing is more important. Him trying to help salvage some of his friends' relationships, very high school-esque sort of shit. But it's just genuinely nice, especially over the series of books, that we see Omen just get better. He becomes, like, not necessarily smarter, but he becomes better with his magic. He becomes more confident in himself. He, is willing to not only stick up for his friends, but push back against them sometimes. His relationship with his brother has become extremely intimate and complicated because of his brother's previous role as a chosen one, and now his brother's want of just wanting to go out and be by himself. And I don't know, like, it was really, really good. It was really nice over the last several books, especially this book as well, to Omen come into his own, where he's now kind of the cool kid. He's kind of the savior. People come to Omen and they ask him for his help. And I don't know, I really like that. I really like that. It's not necessarily like a, farm boy to epic hero tale, but it's just your average Joe and a kid with very little self-confidence starting to grow into a young adult that can be relied upon. Even though he does still have a lot of self-doubt, where he's like, why are people coming to me? But then he kicks on and he takes charge. And it was really, really, really good. I like that sort of character development with Omen. I think Derek, you did a fucking good job there. I'm not going to try and ramble on too much. I know this is like book 14. We're very far in the series. There's obviously been lots of events, lots of characters come and go. So I'm not gonna hassle too deeply on too much of the book specific. We're gonna keep this video short. One thing I sort of did and didn't like was the second future Skullduggery and evil Skullduggery. In this world, when you become magic, you're born with your true name, the name of your soul, your given name, the name your parents give you, and then your taken name, which is what happens with a lot of magical beings. They take a name that they feel represents themselves the best. Pardon me. Now, if you go through a heap of like change, not just within your life, but within yourself, some magical beings take on a new name that fits them to their core now that they've been changed by past events, like I might have had one name, like say I had a taken name. I may have taken one name when I was younger, but then after events in my life, like my sweet sister, after she passed, that is a fundamental shift within myself and in my life. And then I may have taken another name. Because of future events, Skullduggery takes another name, and he takes the name Cadaver Kane. He took the two names of his two best friends, essentially, Valkyrie Kane and Cadaver Grant. I had to think for a second. Which really helps not screw up the two skeletons in the story. But it wasn't just Cadaver trying to come back and allow events to pass a certain way so that the timeline moves in a particular order. He came back and he is different because once upon a time, Jesus Christ, long before many of the events of the books, how do I explain it? He went exploring and went into a reality that is just dead. A whole universe of everything that is dead, no life. And he met beings called the V2D, I think that's what they're called. Supposedly his mind fractured and they gave him, with everything that comes to an end, they gave him like a weird sort of perception power, I suppose you could say, where he understands the chain of events are going to happen in a certain way. He can see it beforehand. I'm not quite sure. But then when he came back, his mind sort of wiped it because it was too much to handle. And then we had all the events of the books. And then we had the events in the future of this book. And when Valkyrie dies, he snaps. And then he's able to access all those memories or that ability that the V2D want. And the reason he comes back is not because so he can allow the events to happen as they're supposed to, but to re-alter the events. So instead of summoning the Faceless Ones, he can basically put a death orb over the world and summon the V2D. Which actually sounds fucking hectic when I say it out loud. But when I was reading it, I just felt like we already have a lot of dark gods and a lot of crazy shit happening. But the idea that subconsciously, or for an extremely long time, Skullduggery had been putting steps in place so that when this particular moment came, it would all fall into place. That did feel a little bit, it felt a little bit cheesy, a little bit cheaty. feels like plot armor. Feels like it's supposed to, like, so we don't have to rewrite events constantly. It feels like the plot armor to be able to keep most of the storyline on track. I don't know if I'm just being nitpicky because it's not entirely pointed towards an adult audience. It's aimed still at a more slightly younger demographic. But I think I am going to be a little bit nitpicky. I felt there were certain characters introduced and little sub-storylines that were unnecessary. They didn't add anything to the story. Characters like Coda felt kind of pointless. Like when he interacted with Valkyrie in the story, or when there were certain events happening, just like it didn't seem to really add didn't add an extra layer of the story to be like, oh, I'm so glad that happened, or I'm so glad I got to see that. It was sort of just there, his parts, and his interaction in the story had nothing to do with the main storyline, which is fine. That happens. It's good to sort of break things up a little bit to, like, feel that the situation isn't as heavy, or sometimes that the situation, while being complex and, world-ending, other shit still happens, other things still go on around you, and you kind of don't have time to deal with fucking stupid shit. But I lost my train of thought. It just felt, like if you took it out and maybe you replaced it with a little bit more time on Omen, or the relationship between Valkyrie and Melitza, or maybe delved a little deeper with Crepuscular. I can never say his fucking name. I'm not going to even attempt it. With one of the other characters, or maybe Skullduggery and Cadaver, the two versions of himself. I think that would have been really good. I think that would have been nicer, or it would have been more filling in that cake than just adding an extra layer of icing to be like, oh, here's some extra stuff. Here's some extra story that doesn't have to do with the story. If you took pretty much all that stuff out, apart from one scene where you could just change Coda to another character, it's the same book. At the end of the book, when we see the final shape of their relationship, there we go. Got it. That makes the most sense. You could have still taken out Coda and everything still would have worked. Yeah. All in all, it's another Skullduggery book. I love the series. This is my Harry Potter growing up. I can be as nitpicky as I want. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going to love it. If you haven't read the Skullduggery series, if you think maybe I'll give it a crack, whatever, give it a try. Obviously, the first handful of books, I'm going to say maybe the first 4 or 5 books, are aimed at quite a younger audience. And as the books go along and our characters get older, our themes get more mature, and that would make sense. Just like in Harry Potter, just like in a lot of stories, Wheel of Time, our characters progress and the themes change. So those early ones are going to be quite childish, but I think still quite enjoyable. He's a skeleton in a suit and he's a smart ass. It's a fucking epic character. Valkyrie has become a very beautiful, complex, strong, but also highly broken individual. I love the Skullduggery books. I'm never going to probably not love the Skullduggery books, apart from one. So, give it a crack, guys. Or maybe even like, if you're reading this and you have young kids around that age of 12 and 13, I'm losing my voice. Nieces, nephews, whatever, highly recommend. I love these books and I would recommend them to any kids around that age. And I might do that for my niece, actually. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Merry Christmas. If you're in Australia, please stay cool. I know it's getting freaking hot outside. And, see you next time.